Alright, man, listen up. The Russian-Mongolian forces have taken back Hilltop 235. We all know it gives them a key operational advantage in this sector, so we gotta go back and take it. We all know we took it 6 months ago, and they took it basically a year before that, but we gotta go back there, and we gotta show them what the Western Allies and American forces can do in this area. We gotta show them that we're not pushovers, even though this war's been going since 1914. It's now 1964, it's been 50 years. And we gotta keep doing this. What? What, Kowalski? What do you want?
I'm sorry, but this isn't crazy to anybody else. I mean, a war that's been going on for 50 years and hasn't ended. I just don't know, man.
Welcome to Iron Storm, a parallel history where World War I never ended. The Allies are still stuck in a perpetual struggle with an Eastern enemy. However, it's not Germany now. Germany at one point was overrun by something called the Russo-Mongolian Empire. Events took place that essentially the Russian Revolution occurred. However, a man named Baron Nikolai Alexandrovich von Udenberg seized Mongolia in 1921 and used that strength to crush the Russian Revolution and turn west to invade Europe. And from that point, the world had been at war, all the way till 1964 is when this game picks up. At this point in the war, any type of mobility is completely eliminated. There are gigantic fortified lines running from north to south, splitting Germany in two, and the two sides constantly pounded each other. At this point in the game's history, it's estimated that over 80 million have died in this conflict, yet it still rages on. News comes forward that the Russo-Mongolian Empire is developing heavy water to basically create atomic weapons. You take on the role of Lieutenant Anderson, a skilled commando who has been assigned to go behind enemy lines and locate and secure a sample of the heavy water and bring it back to the Western Allies. Along the way, Lieutenant Anderson discovers that the conflict is still dragging on as bloody as ever. The tactics from the First World War have not changed. Snipers and infantry still rule the day, trying to break no man's land, just ending in the slaughter of thousands for needless gains with little to no territory taken. So the war hasn't changed. But as Lieutenant Anderson progresses forward, he begins to learn more and more about what's actually going on in the world of Iron Storm. With the war seemingly raging on indefinitely, Western armies begin to float themselves on the stock exchange, essentially having people buy bonds and shares in the armies to help them sustain the fight. This, however, seems to backfire, with the war just raging on perpetually because capitalist interests begin to dominate. And the idea that these armies expending bullets and things like that keep profits high and still kill ever more people. And that's the universe of Iron Storm. Iron Storm is a title that draws a lot of its potential from the idea. The actual gameplay is incredibly lacking in most regards, but what made the game so intriguing was the environment it created for itself. And also, if you bought the PC game originally when it came out in 2002, the box came with a newspaper, and this newspaper had an incredibly detailed amount of events that led up to the war the way they are. In later releases, that's not really present, so a lot of the information I'm sharing with you was only available in the newspaper in the original release. So that makes it somewhat unique. So the game, essentially, without this information is almost a bit torturing, because this information isn't there, and you almost don't even know what's going on. Because the game, unfortunately, fails in a lot of areas. Where Iron Storm suffers is that it tries so hard for the ambient atmosphere that it really just doesn't guide you or tell you where to go. So you end up running back and forth on these maps trying to figure out what to do, because it's not obvious. A lot of these things are just really goofy. The shooting mechanics are rough and painful. There's a third-person mode, which really is pointless, and if you go into, it's incredibly inaccurate and hard to do anything in. So it's almost even pointless as to why it's an option in the first place. The game's mechanics and controls are relatively clunky. So the game tries really hard to present you with this really magic environment of dull grays, photorealistic kind of trench lines, things like that, but it just fails in overall gameplay. For example, when playing the game, if you try to do something out of order on a mission map, it'll do weird things, like it'll make the enemies you're fighting in that area invulnerable to where you can't kill them. And it's the most infuriating thing, because you don't know this, because the game doesn't direct you where to go. It's literally just an open environment where you have to continually run back and forth, and by trial and error you figure it out. And here's one of my favorite parts in the game. You essentially have to dig your way through these boxes to find a vent to get to the other room. But at no point before in the game had you ever done that. So you don't know that you can. So literally you run around in circles in this part of the game trying to figure out what to do because it's not obvious. It's just, how would you know how to do this without... I had to look it up. I don't understand how they figured it out either. Literally, this is the first time you could do any of this. So my all-time favorite thing about this game is the last level, which is by far the most infuriating thing you'll ever do. Not because it's hard, but because the elevator is the most frustrating device to use in the game. I'll show you. Doesn't matter what floor you point at, it's always the wrong one. It's so infuriating. Like, literally, you have to solve the puzzles by going to the different floors, turning off power, and re-establishing power, doing things like that. But it makes it exponentially longer and more frustrating because the elevator won't go up or down because it picks the wrong button every time. Alright, so if you don't want the ending of this game ruined, I highly suggest you stop watching now. But honestly, I don't suggest you play it, because the game overall is painful and it just tortures you the entire time you're playing it most of the time. The only thing that kept me going is because I'm a really big fan of the concept and I like the environment. But that was really trying, and I almost quit a few times because of how annoying the game was. And the ending is the biggest slap in the face you'll ever come across. Essentially, here is the ending. You discover that the war is being put on by something called the Consortium, which is a group of industrialists who are basically manipulating the stock exchange and the global economy to continue the war. And your character discovers this. And so essentially, the main bad guy is assassinated by the head of the Consortium, and you escape on one of their helicopters, and you hear yourself squeal or something along those lines, assuming you've been murdered, and that's where the game ends. That's it. There's no positive ending, there's no closure, there's nothing. You just hear your character squeal, and that's the end of Iron Storm. So, a game that relatively tortured you on the way through, tortured you in one final way as a gigantic slap in the face. So that's the end of Iron Storm. A game that tries really hard to be something special. And in a way, it achieved that. Its environment and the concept was relatively unique. But unfortunately, the gameplay and just the way it came together wasn't. It just failed. And in an odd way, I still like the game, despite the fact it kind of tortured me for a couple hours when I played my way through it. But, as always, thank you for watching. Hope to see you again. Have a good day or evening. If you like this content, I highly suggest you check out my website, Historicnerd.com. I also highly suggest you check out theconsoleexplosion.com. It has a number of other content providers there that generate quite a bit of good work that you might find enjoyable. If you want to say something to me directly, feel free to contact me at historicalnerd on twitter.com. So feel free. Alright, thank you very much for dropping by. Have a great night, evening, or day, whatever it is you're doing. Bye.